Hello students, welcome to Baji Rao IAS Academy previous year questions analysis. Now we have been analyzing the previous year questions that were asked by UPSC in the year 2022 mains examination. So yesterday also we have discussed few questions related to Indian polity and constitution. So today also we have few more questions for discussion and analysis. So in this session we will be understanding how we can structure these questions and what is the way to adopt to write a best suitable answer in these questions. So this is what we are going to learn in today's session. So first question is, discuss the role of National Commission for Backward Classes in the wake of transformation from a statutory body to a constitutional body. So recently, through the 123 Constitutional Amendment Act that was being introduced in the Parliament, the statutory body called National Commission for Backward Classes has been transformed into a constitutional body. So in this regard, so what will be the role of the National Commission for Backward Classes in this particular respect? Now firstly, understand what is National Commission for Backward Classes. The 102nd Constitutional Amendment Act 2008 so provides for the constitutional status to the National Commission for Backward Classes. Okay, so now it is a constitutional body. However, when it comes to the role and responsibility of the National Commission for Backward Classes, this commission has the authority to examine the complaints. In case of any complaints which are related to the socially and educationally backward classes, will be dealt by the National Commission for Backward Classes firstly, and secondly it will also suggest the welfare measures for the socially as well as educationally backward classes. So after that, previously we have a statutory body called National Commission for Backward Classes. So that is the statutory body. Now what is the statutory body? Statutory body is an organization or a body which is formed through legislature or legislative enactment. So that is called as a statutory body. Now previously National Commission for Backward Classes was under the administrative jurisdiction of Ministry of Social Justice and Empowerment. Right now it is a constitutional independent body. Now what is the background of National Commission for Backward Classes when it was formed? So the backward classes commissions, there were two backward classes commissions appointed, first in the year 1950 and second in the year 1970s. The committee that was first appointed was known as Kaka Kalelkar Committee, and the second committee was known as BP Mandal Committee. Now the BP Mandal Committee has recommended 27% of reservation for the socially and educationally backward classes. Okay, so based on that, now OBCs were granted 27% of reservation. Similarly, in Indira Sanai case 1992, so we all know about the Indira Sanai judgment where the Supreme Court has validated 27% of reservation for the socially and educationally backward classes. Now in this particular case, that is Indira Sanai judgment of 1992, the Supreme Court has directed the Union government to create a permanent body. Why? Because the permanent body can entertain, examine and recommend the inclusion and exclusion of various backward classes for the purpose of providing various reservation benefits. Okay, so it is also important to identify the socially and educationally backward classes, and both inclusion and exclusion will be dealt by this body. The Indira Sanai case of 1992 has in that judgment, the Supreme Court has recommended the same to the government. Now in this case, in pursuant of this directions by the Supreme Court, the Parliament passed National Commission for Backward Classes Act in the year 1993. There was a legislation in the year 1993. Okay, so that constituted National Commission for Backward Classes. Similarly, 123rd Constitutional Amendment Bill. See, all bills may not pass. So because of this reason, National Commission for Backward Classes was introduced in the Parliament as a bill 123 Constitutional Amendment Bill. However, National Commission for Backward Classes was given the constitutional status through 102 Constitutional Amendment. Okay, so I hope you understood the difference between the 102 Constitutional Amendment and 123 Constitutional Amendment Bill. Now, this has been provided the constitutional status particularly to safeguard the interests of socially and educationally backward classes more effective way. Now, in this respect, what are the constitutional provisions regarding National Commission for Backward Classes? Now, it is also important for us to understand the constitutional provisions which are related to National Commission for Backward Classes. Now, firstly, Article 340. This specifically deals with identifying those socially and educationally backward classes. Why? Because in order to provide various benefits, social welfare programs, reservation benefits to these socially and educationally backward classes, it is very important to identify those sections. So therefore, Article 340 particularly provides for the National Commission for Backward Classes, and this commission understand the condition of the backwardness. So what is the nature of the backwardness of these communities? Once they understood these conditions, they also make proper recommendations to remove the difficulties so that inclusive development of those communities can be possible. Now, after that, the 102nd Constitutional Amendment Act. So this has provided constitutional status to the National Commission for Backward Classes. So please understand, in this constitutional amendment, two new articles were inserted. So the first article is Article 338B and the second article is Article 342A. So these two new articles were being inserted through 102nd Constitutional Amendment. Now this particular amendment has also brought another article, changes in the another article, that is Article 366. Now, what is Article 338B deals with? Now, this particular article provides the required or the necessary authority to the National Commission for Backward Classes to examine the complaints, welfare measures regarding the socio-economic educationally backward classes. Right? So, for example, if their rights are being violated, so they can complain to the National Commission for Backward Classes for the grievance or providing justice, okay, or redressal of their grievances, and they can the commission can examine the complaints and welfare measures regarding the socially and educationally backward classes. Similarly, Article 342A, so this empowers the president to specify who are the communities who are socially and educationally backward in nature in various states and other union territories. I hope you understood both Article 338B and Article 342A. So whenever you write any answer on National Commission for Backward Classes, make sure you have provided these two articles along with the 102nd Constitutional Amendment. Now, in this respect, the question has been asked that because of a transformation of National Commission for Backward Classes from a legislative body or a statutory body to a constitutional body, now what is the specific role of the National Commission for Backward Classes? Now, in this respect, National Commission for Backward Classes investigates and also monitors the complaints which are related to the National Commission for Backward Classes. So when the NCBC entertains the complaints of socially and educationally backward classes, it ensures that the adequate safeguards are being provided to these communities and the rights which are being earmarked for the socially and educationally backward classes are being fulfilled by the respective governments. So everything will be looked into by the National Commission for Backward Classes. So whether any such safeguards which are provided by the Constitution or any other law, and even it evaluate the existing, the working of existing safeguards which are provided to the social economic backward classes. The second major role of this commission is to it participates and advises in the socio-economic development of these communities. For example, if the government has been planning to bring any policy measure for the welfare of these communities, then there's a huge role for the National Commission for Backward Classes. Okay, so it assesses the impact of these programs on these communities. So therefore it provides valuable suggestions, valuable advices, so that these programs can be implemented in a more effective manner. So educationally backward classes, and it also evaluates the progress of the development under the union or any other state. Now the next major role of the National Commission for Backward Classes is that it prepares a comprehensive report, annual report, and this report will be presented to the president. Okay, so not just once in a year, once per annum, but even when a commission may deem fit, then it can submit the report to the president. Okay, so the report majorly contains the safeguards which are being provided to these communities. Okay, so the socially and educationally backward classes. Now the president, once the report is submitted to the president will lay the report before each house of the parliament. So not just the National Commission for Backward Classes, even National Commission for Scheduled Caste, National Commission for Scheduled Tribe, so everything they submit a report, and the report will be placed before the each house of the parliament. Okay, so in case of any report, okay, or any matter that is being concerned with a state government, a copy of that particular report is being sent to the respective state government as well, right? So National Commission for Backward Classes has to discharge such other functions. Okay, so not just the above mentioned functions, roles, but it also discharges various other functions in relation to the protection, welfare, and development and advancement of these socially and educationally backward classes. Okay, so in case the president if assigned more functions to the National Commission for Backward Classes, then it has to fulfill those responsibilities. Okay, and any provisions which are being related or made by the parliament, or any rule that is being specified, so everything, those roles are being performed by the National Commission for Backward Classes. And the other thing is that it has all the powers of a civil court while trying a suit. For example, it entertains complaints against the state, individuals, private companies, or any other body. Okay, so while trying a suit, it has all the powers of a civil court. Now in this respect, there are certain flaws within the National Commission for Backward Classes. Now in order to overcome those flaws, we need to suggest a plausible way forward into this. So firstly, the composition of the National Commission for Backward Classes should reflect the feature of an expert body. Okay, so it is already being mandated by the Supreme Court. So the overall panel of the National Commission for Backward Classes should have an expert body. So expert body will be able to safeguard the interests of the socially and educationally backward classes, and it can advise and suggest better and more suitable measures. And that is the essence of advancement of these socially and educationally backward classes. Now apart from that, if there is any information that is being related to the functioning of National Commission for Backward Classes, the welfare measures which are being taken by the government for these communities, that information must be published in the public domain. Okay, so not just that, the findings of the caste census, for example, the caste census are being conducted. Now caste census essentially reveals that the advancement of a certain caste, so whether they are socio-economically still backward, educationally still backward, or they are progressing in the social ladder. Okay, so the government must publish the details of any caste census and even the recommendations that are being provided by the commission for the betterment of these socially and educationally backward classes. Now when we talk about the composition of the National Commission for Backward Classes, so it should include more female members that ensure more gender sensitivity, and it should also provide representation to a wide variety of stakeholders, and that is the essence of a diverse and dynamic function of National Commission for Backward Classes. So lastly, the vote bank politics. Vote bank politics involves mobilization of voters. Okay, so the political parties used to mobilize voters on various caste, religion, ethnicity. So in these lines, they started to mobilize voters. Okay, so this ultimately benefit the political parties. However, it fragments the society, it polarizes the society. So the vote bank politics should give way to the value based politics. There's a need for value based politics rather than playing a role of a vote bank politics, so that only truly backward sections of the society will get the benefit of reservation. Okay, so reservation should be provided to only genuine beneficiaries, not all. But what happening with the vote bank reservation, the reservation umbrella has been further widening, covering more and more communities, even though they are economically and educationally progressive enough. Okay, so this is what the way we can structure this answer. Okay, so this is also 150 word answer, so you can write these points in a much more concise manner. So the next question is about the Gati Shakti National Master Plan for a multimodal connectivity. Now this Gati Shakti Yojana is very significant for our examinations. Okay, so the Gati Shakti program primarily aimed at improving the infrastructure in India. Okay, so infrastructure plus connectivity, it mainly focuses on infrastructure and connectivity, thereby ultimately reducing the logistic costs and making India a $5 trillion economy, right? So in order to pursue these goals, because once we are able to improve the reduce the logistic cost, that significantly improves India's ease of doing business. And ease of doing business improvement in its ranking is very important to attract major industries, and that would give further fillip to India's ambitious programs like Make in India and even enlarge Atmanirbhar Bharat. Now in this respect, the Gati Shakti Yojana program was launched by the government. Okay, so no doubt about that. However, it requires a meticulous coordination between the government and the private sector in order to achieve the targets, the goals such as connectivity. Now in this respect, we need to understand what is exactly the Gati Shakti National Master Plan for multimodal connectivity. Now understand, through this program, the government has been planning to increase the capacity of roadways. Okay, so firstly, the government has been planning to increase the capacity of the roadways. Now if you look at the total contribution or the composition of the transportation of goods, still roadways constitute around 75% of total transportation. So in this respect, we need to improve the roadways capacity, reduce the congestion. Okay, that is also essence to reducing the vehicular emissions. So secondly, the government has been planning to build around 200 new airports, heliports and water aerodromes, so that were being envisioned by Gati Shakti National Master Plan. So thirdly, the railway transport cargo capacity to be increased to around 1,600 tons by the year 2025. Okay, so most of these targets are aimed to achieve by 2025. So fourth, the transmission network to be increased by around 4,54,200 circuit kilometers. Okay, and this is also make sure that India's energy demand will be met. Now fifth, the renewable energy capacity should be further widened or further increased to 225 gigawatt by the financial year 25, and this is in line with Prime Minister's Panchamrut program. Okay, so we have certain ambitious goals in the Panchamrut program, and this is in line with the ambitious program. Now 4G connectivity. So PM Gati Shakti program has also envisioned that the 4G connectivity for the villages by financial year 2022, around 20 new food parks will also be established. However, the Gati Shakti National Master Plan has 6 pillars. Okay, what are those 6 pillars? So first pillar is comprehensiveness and tech-led holistic planning into it. Okay, so this is the first pillar of Gati Shakti National Master Plan. So the second pillar is prioritization of work. So no haphazard decisions. So no quick decisions making or decisions which should be based on evidence data driven policy making. So therefore the work must be prioritized. And thirdly, optimization of the decisions taken, optimization of resources, and optimization of the work that is being done. Okay, so optimization actually started before actual groundwork started. Now it also talks about the regular synchronization and analytical aspect of these projects, and it is dynamic with changing needs of the economy and the economic growth and developmental requirements. The Gati Shakti National Master Plan will also regularly changes. So because of this reason, it is known as a dynamic program. Now in this context, please write a brief introduction. So what is National Gati Shakti National Master Plan? Now this Gati Shakti Yojana that was being introduced by the government, it aims to improve connectivity and infrastructure development across the country. So according to an estimate, India requires around 100 lakh crore of investment. Okay, in the next 5 years, India lack a huge investment. So therefore, Gati Shakti Yojana is one step ahead in achieving the required or the necessary infrastructure. Now we are planning to provide or to improve the living standards of our populations. So in this respect, enhancing the connectivity and infrastructure is very crucial for the development of a country. Now, the achieving this ambitious goal of connectivity actually requires a meticulous coordination between the different stakeholders, government, the private sector, and different parties within the private sector, government, and the international organizations, also every organization. So however, in this particular program, the coordination between the government and the private sector is very important for the successful implementation of this particular program. Okay, so this partnership between the government and the private sector is essential for planning, execution, and sustainable management of the infrastructure projects. So because of this reason, the Gati Shakti Yojana's government and private sector cooperation is very important. Now in this respect, how this collaboration between the government and the private sector will help or contribute to the success of Gati Shakti Yojana. So firstly, it helps in resource mobilization. Now what is a resource mobilization? Resource mobilization is mobilizing resources for a particular project. Okay, so for example, when you are building or constructing an infrastructure projects, they are capital intensive projects, so they require a huge capital. So therefore, private sector has the capacity to mobilize those resources. So they can mobilize substantial financial resources, and not just resources, they also have a huge expertise in construction of these infrastructure projects. So along with finances, expertise, and they also have a technology. Okay, so they also have a technology. So this ultimately benefit the government. So collaboration between the government and the private sector will help in mobilizing these necessary resources, expertise, and technology, and that is very critical for the development of various transportation networks across the country. So resource mobilization is the first benefit of this collaboration. Secondly, we need to talk about the expertise and innovation that is brought in by the private sector. So if government has been actively collaborating with the private sector in enhancing connectivity and infrastructure, so that would bring a huge expertise and innovation. Okay, so because the private sector very often possesses a specialized knowledge, and they also have a technological innovation, project management skills, so they can expedite the planning and design and execution of complex connectivity projects. So because of this reason, it will benefit the government and the private sector. Now, the collaboration will also result in efficient project implementation. Now, project implementation, project construction is also very important. If project is not completed on time, the project's cost will significantly increase. So therefore, over a period of time, what happens is the project will become financially unviable. So in this respect, efficient project implementation is also very important. So private sector has possessed a huge experience in the project execution, so that can lead to efficient and timely completion of these infrastructure projects. Okay, so that reduces significant delays, and also the cost overruns will be declined. So therefore it finally ensures a substantial progress in these projects and efficient project implementations. And after that, we need to talk about the risk sharing. Now, if only the government is a major participant, the major risk is on the government. However, the private sector alone is participating, the risk is only on the one party. But with effective coordination between the government and the private sector, the risk would be shared. Okay. So it allows the sharing of risks and responsibilities between the government and the private entities. So over a period of time, what happens is it helps in minimizing the financial burden on the government. Okay, so and also it ensures the project sustainability, so that the existing funds with the government can be used for other purposes. For example, it can be used for welfare purposes, right? Now, after that, we need to talk about the operational efficiency of these infrastructure projects which are being constructed in public-private partnership model. Now, private sector involvement very often leads in improved operational efficiency. So they well maintain the infrastructure projects and the upkeep of infrastructure assets. So that ensures the long-term viability of these infrastructure projects. So that is a win-win situation for both the government and the private sector. So after that, the initiative financing models. So when it comes to the innovative financing models, so innovative financing models involves the build, operate and transfer. Now in this respect, firstly, private sector builds a project, an infrastructure project. Now after building such infrastructure project, the private sector alone operate this project. Okay, so for a certain period of time, the private sector operate this project, so they can earn the income from that particular asset, and then they will transfer such infrastructure project to the government. However, they completely don't own the project. Okay, after a certain period of time, they will transfer the infrastructure project to the government. Now the other model is build, own, operate and transfer. So there are two models, boat model and boot model. Okay, so please understand these two models. So first, the private company build these infrastructure projects, they own the project for a certain period of time and they operate, and then they will transfer this project to the government. Okay, so this can help in acceleration of the project implementation. Okay, because this provides a kind of an incentive for the private participants, so they're ready to invest in these infrastructure projects. So after that, we need to talk about the job creation and economic growth because of the infrastructure development. Now the collaborative efforts between the government and the private sector, this will result in a significant job creation and stimulate the economic growth by promoting trade and connectivity. Okay, so now when we are developing infrastructure projects, that could significantly create a gainful employment opportunities and would also boost the economic growth and consequent economic development. So after that, we need to talk about the balancing interests of different parties when there is a collaboration effort between the private sector and the government. So effective coordinations ensures that the interests of the public, the government sector, that includes the public welfare and inclusivity of these projects, and the private sector investment. So private sector majorly focuses on the profitability, so they're being aligned and it will create the win-win situation. Right. So after that, the regulatory environment is also very important. Now when it comes to the regulatory environment, the government plays a pivotal role in creating a conducive regulatory environment. Okay, so that encourages private sector participation and protect investments and ensures fair competition. Okay, so the regulatory environment is also very important because it plays a very important role, and that creates a regulatory environment, and a proper regulatory environment rather than not having or having a vacuum when it comes to regulation, will incentivize and encourage more and more private sector to take part in these investment projects. So that enhances or strengthens the participation and protect the investments and ensure a fair competition. So after that, we need to talk about the transparent governance procedures. So they are also very important to eliminate, corruption and the leakage of funds or divergence of these funds. So therefore, open and transparent governance practices will further strengthen the trust between the government and the private sector. Okay, so overall this will facilitate the smoother collaboration and project execution. So in conclusion, what you have to do, what you have to write, so you can write certain challenges in achieving the public-private partnership in the Gati Shakti National Master Plan. So what are those challenges? So the challenges include the contractual disputes, secondly the regulatory hurdles, and public resistance against those infrastructure projects. For example, whenever you're building an infrastructure project, it requires a huge amount of land. Okay, so you have to clear the forests, and you have to vacate the people, and it also results in rehabilitation and resettlement issues of those displaced people. So therefore it creates a lot of challenges that include ensuring social and environmental sustainability. We need to address these challenges for the success of the Gati Shakti Yojana. Okay, so these needs to be addressed by creating effective mechanisms, and there should be a clear guidelines. So in conclusion, the success of Gati Shakti Yojana in achieving its goal of connectivity is actually depends on meticulous coordination between the center or the government and the private sector. Okay, so the collaborative efforts must be guided by the shared objectives, transparency, and proper governance. So that will finally lead to efficient and timely and sustainable infrastructure development. Okay, so ultimately it impacts India's economic growth as well as economic development. Okay, so this is the Gati Shakti Yojana program, and this is how you can conclude this answer. So the next question is with respect to the Rights of Persons with Disabilities Act 2016. Okay, so recently in the year 2016, the Rights of Persons with Disabilities Act was passed, and it remains only a legal document without the intense sensitization of government functionaries and citizens regarding the disability. Now, what this question has been saying that, okay, the government has brought a separate legislation for the rights of persons with disabilities. However, this particular legislation is only a piece of paper, because the government servants and the citizens are not adequately sensitized to make sure that they respect the persons with disabilities. Okay, so therefore in this respect, the sensitization of the government functionaries and citizens regarding disabilities is very important, right? So in the year 2016, the Right of Persons with Disabilities Act was passed. Now, what are the major provisions of this act? So this particular act has differentiated or demarcated different types of disabilities. So they are being covered under the act. So these disabilities were increased from 7 disabilities to 21 disabilities. Now 21 disabilities are being covered under the Persons with Disabilities Act. So secondly, special courts are being provided or established in each district. Okay, so these special courts particularly deal with the cases that are being concerned with the violation of the rights of persons with disabilities, and the courts will also impose penalties for offences committed against persons with disabilities, and it also violation of provisions of new law. Okay, so in case of a violation of any rights or any offences which are being committed against the persons with disabilities, penalties are being imposed. Okay, so those penalties were also mentioned in this Rights of Persons with Disabilities Act 2016. So apart from that, this act has also provided certain rights and amenities to these people. Firstly, the reservation in higher education has increased to 5%. In government jobs also, it has brought to 4%. So when it comes to admission in these educational institutions, the persons with disabilities will get 5% reservation, and government jobs they'll get 4% of reservation. Apart from that, whenever the government is announcing the poverty alleviation schemes, a 5% of designated funds should be provided to the persons with disabilities. So therefore, it finally results in social inclusion of these communities, and that is very important. Now after that, these individuals, persons with disabilities, have a right to free education from 6 to 18 years, and it also ensures the accessibility in public buildings, both government and private, in a prescribed time frame. Okay, so Sugamya Bharat Abhiyan, you may have heard about the Sugamya Bharat Abhiyan. So Sugamya Bharat Abhiyan is providing necessary infrastructure. So this infrastructure is particularly the Divyangjan friendly infrastructure. Okay, so this provides the Divyangjan friendly infrastructure. Now after that, in the introduction, what you have to write: the Rights of Persons with Disabilities Act 2016, that was replaced by Persons with Disabilities, Equal Opportunities, Protection of Rights and Full Participation Act 1995. Okay, so this act was brought, and this act has replaced the existing act. So the existing act was Persons with Disabilities, Equal Opportunities, Protection of Rights and Full Participation Act 1995. So this particular legislation, the Rights of Persons with Disabilities Act, specifically aimed at providing certain rights to these disabled individuals. So therefore, they can be protected from the social stigmatization and discrimination. So they are vulnerable sections, they are marginalized sections. It is very important to provide necessary assistance for these sections of the society, because they are facing social discrimination and social stigmatization. So in fact, section 2 subclause yes of the Rights of Persons with Disabilities Act specifically defines the persons with disabilities. So who are the persons with disabilities? There's a specific definition. So that has been given in the section 2 subsection S. Now the definition says that a person who suffers from a long-term mental, physical, sensory or intellectual impairment in collaboration with barriers, and that ultimately affects his effective participation in a society like a normal individual. So this is the basic definition of a person with disability that is being defined in the Rights of Persons with Disabilities Act. Now in this respect, what are the major objectives of this particular legislation? So Rights of Persons with Disabilities Act. Now the major objectives that were being envisioned by this particular act they primarily include that the disabled people enjoy the right to equality. Okay, so in the society it is very important to treat these people as equal individuals. Okay, so therefore creation of an egalitarian, compassionate society is very important, so they can live a dignified and respectful life. Now after that, there's a separate preamble also in this legislation, Rights of Persons with Disabilities, and this preamble also talks about, or it also aims of protecting the disabled people from all sort of discrimination. Since they are subjected to discrimination in the society, this particular legislation and the preamble talks about protection of these individuals from the discrimination. So thirdly, the act has also seeks to ensure full social, economic, political participation of the disabled people. Okay, so they can live a dignified life away from the derogatory, poor living standards. And in fact, the act promotes the inclusive education. Now, inclusive education, improving the learning outcomes of these disabled individuals is also very important. So therefore, when inclusive education is being provided for these communities, the employment safeguards, so it provides employment safeguard for the disabled people. Okay, that is a sort of a livelihood security that is being provided for these communities. So therefore it aims at empowering the disabled people through inclusive growth and active societal participation. Now in this respect, why it is said that the act remains only a legal document? So it lacks the intense sensitization of the government functionaries and the citizens regarding disability. So there are certain conditions so that prove that there's a lack of sensitization on the part of the government functionaries and even the common citizens. So while the act intends to promote the inclusive education, the goal might be difficult to achieve. So why? Because many of these disabled people still lack access to education. Okay, and apart from that, there's also a shortage of teachers in various schools. And since these people suffer from severe disabilities, they require greater support than the normal kids. So greater support from the school administration, school staff, teachers, and even the parents. So therefore, there is a need for targeted approach. In targeted approach, what happens that we are targeting the people with disabilities and providing them the necessary infrastructure and necessary conditions so that they can improve their learning outcomes and the goal of providing inclusive education can be achieved. Secondly, we need to talk about the Accessible India campaign or Sugamya Bharat Abhiyan. So you may have heard about this particular program of the government. So this program actually envisioned or aimed at providing the disabled friendly infrastructure in government and private buildings. Okay, so whenever the infrastructure projects were designed, so those infrastructure projects should also have Divyangjan friendly infrastructure. Okay, now it is with respect to the government buildings, public transport, access to information and communication technology. So thirdly, there was a widespread apathy among the public servants with respect to the disabled people. For example, they approached the government servants for social welfare schemes, welfare benefits, and even the pensions. Okay. However, there was a widespread apathy among these public servants towards the disabled people. Okay. So for instance, the public servants or the public functionaries, they themselves show a discrimination towards these disabled individuals. So in fact, apart from that, there's also an apathy on the part of the public. Okay, so regarding disability, for instance, there's a separate parking places for the cars for disabled individuals. So despite reservation of those parking spaces, the normal people or the general public will park their vehicles disregarding the rules. Okay, so this shows the attitude of apathy of public towards the disabled individuals. Now, the quota of jobs that were being reserved for the disabled people are very often not filled. Why? Because they do not have the relevant educational qualifications. So since they do not have relevant educational qualifications, they don't have access to skills. So most of these jobs which are reserved were not filled by the state governments. Okay, so that ultimately affect their livelihood opportunities and their living standards. So we need to talk about the greater levels of discrimination and social stigma that is being faced by these disabled individuals. So therefore, greater support is necessary from the government, general public, and the public servants. So in fact, the private buildings are being coming up with the rampant urbanization. However, these buildings were not meeting the standards of Sugamya Bharat Abhiyan. So they were not providing the necessary infrastructure for the disabled individuals. Okay, so this is the content that you have to write in this part of the answer. Okay, so the act still remains a legal document without intense sensitization. Now, in conclusion, what you have to write: the persons with disabilities provided for a definition. Okay, so this act has provided a definition for persons with disabilities. Now this definition is much more inclusive than before. Okay, so before act was Persons with Disabilities Act 1995. Okay, so because earlier legislation only included individual who have the disability or suffering a disability of more than 40%. Now the disability has been substantially increased from 7 diseases to more than 20 diseases. So therefore, in this respect, the true implementation require the intense sensitization of both government and the normal public. So that is the essence of the true implementation of this program, this legislation, that is Persons with Disabilities Act 2016. So that's all for today, and if you like our video, please like the video and also subscribe to our YouTube channel. Thank you.